Hello, it's Alexa. You are listening to the Wishbeads podcast. And today we are going to speak to Susyn Reeve. And she reached out to me because she had a great wish story to share. It was right around Valentine's Day, Valentine's Day was this week, but before Valentine's Day, a couple weeks ago, and she wanted to share her wish story. And it was a story of true love and her wish coming true and her finding love in her life at 74. And I just felt the energy and enthusiasm of this post. And I immediately wrote back and I said, Susyn, do you want to be on the podcast? Because I cannot wait to hear your story and to share it with others. Because wishing, and I've noticed this over the years, that it's such a tender, precious thing. And so there's sometimes a lot of hesitation around sharing wishes. It's like a private, secret thing, because I think there's a lot of notions around wishing that if you tell your wish, it's not going to come true, or a genie is going to come and you only get 3 wishes, or maybe you only get 1 big wish in your whole life. And then there's a lot of fear that comes up. What if your wish doesn't come true? Etc. and so forth, which means that people get shy around sharing it. And I sensed in Susyn a true celebration. Now, it turns out that Susyn's work all centers around love, and you're going to learn all about her and her work and the books that she's written, and all of those links are in the show notes. But it's exciting for me to share her story, not just of her wish that came true, but what she's ready to wish for next. So without further ado, this is Susyn. First of all, let me tell you, I am so totally delighted that you opened your heart and said yes. And seeing as your specialty is love, I'm not surprised, but I am pleasantly delighted, because wishing is an interesting business. When you start to touch on that heart space, the deep desires, the big juicy wishes, immediately fear or doubt or uncertainty or hesitation jumps in. And so today I'm so thrilled to hear your story for the first time, because you and I haven't talked until now, which is why it's so fun to record this. But I want to hear about how you found out about Wishbeads, what happened, and how we connected. And then let's dive right into the juicy, juicy wish that your heartstrings are plucking and making you listen to now.
Yay.
Yay. So all of it. So Susyn, how did you find out about Wishbeads?
It was, and I apologize for not looking up what I must have listened to. It was the first wish beads that I bought were special for a special cause, the black and white ones.
Oh, yes, for Justin Michael Williams. I normally
Yes.
have, I have mine on too today. I have,
Yes.
Look, we both have them. I love Justin. This is the shadow and light bracelet.
Yes, exactly.
Cool.
So I heard him, maybe it was with you, I'm not sure, but I heard him, he mentioned wish beads. I went and I bought it, and I loved the packaging. And then I had it for, quite honestly, I didn't put the wish in it until the end of this January.
Wow.
But I've had it and have bought many people wish beads since then.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So that's how I found out about it. And then before Valentine's Day last year, 2022, I think it was buy one rose quartz and half off on another. And so I bought one for my granddaughter and sent it to her, and then had this sitting again on a bedside table. And I had decided that last year on Valentine's Day, it was time to step into being in a new relationship, which had been just about 5 years, 4.5 years. And I didn't know what to write. Yes, I have written 5 books, but I didn't know what to write. And then before just before Valentine's Day, a friend of mine who has a line of makeup said, I'll do your makeup and we'll take photos. And so I was all ready. And on Valentine's Day, I think it was on Valentine's Day, I know I went online, but I think it was a little while after that that I wrote the wish. And I meant to keep it when I took it out this January and put another wish in. But I put it on the bedside table and I thought it was a piece of scrap paper
Oh, and
and
it
threw
went,
it away.
it's okay. You released it.
Completed.
It was completed because it was a done deal. So what happened? So you wrote your wish
So I
last
wrote my
Valentine's
wish
Day,
and I know that it
2022.
said something like, I'm spooning with my new love. I feel loved and loving, and this love is contributing to a more loving world. It was something like that.
Yeah.
And so when I went online, there were a flurry of men that were interesting to me, one in particular. And he was just very funny. And there were a few emails back and forth. And then one of my closest friends, boyfriend, died in an instant. And I wrote to him and said, I'm going to be gone for a few days with this friend. And he wrote back and said, if you want to talk about this, call. So a couple of days later, I called him and he said, I'm at the office. I'm very busy. I'll call you right back. He called me back. I was on the phone. I called him back. He said, I'm in a hurry. I've got to leave. I'll call you later. And then I didn't hear from him later. I was already in love by this point. I hadn't met
With the
him.
same fella.
Yeah, but this isn't who I'm with.
Okay, do tell.
I was in love with him from 2 emails. And then he didn't call and I was heartbroken. And this was old stuff. And now here's an absurd part of it that I really got the next day, but this tormented me. When he called me back, he heard my voicemail. And my voicemail says at the end of it, something like, and when you hang up, take a few moments, focus on your breath and what you're grateful for. And so I decided that he hadn't called me back because he thought that message was just like too new agey. So I just knew that this was ridiculous.
Right. But those voices, they pop up. They do.
And familiar, very, very familiar. And so the next morning, I thought I was walking from my bedroom into the kitchen and I thought, this is absolutely ridiculous. Why would this bother me at all? And the heartbreak was over, absolutely dissolved. And this was not the first time in my life that this issue has surfaced. It just absolutely dissolved. And all I could do was giggle. Not even laugh, giggle.
Giggle. I love the personal power that you stepped into and you broke the illusion. You really, literally looked at the illusion and had enough presence of mind to say, this is familiar. This is not in my, not in integrity or in alignment with who I am. My voicemail is in alignment with who I am. But these voices of doubt and nervousness and thinking I'm not enough, I love that you burst that illusion bubble and started laughing. And I also love the idea that the heartbreak was just like evaporated. And I think that if anyone listening or watching this, how often do we give that voice of doubt so much power over us? And it's literally an illusion because, Who knows why that guy didn't call you back? Right?
Well, I actually found out because his mother had had a stroke.
Right. And then we all say, oh, it's us. It's our fault.
Yes,
We did.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
About a week later, again, there's something that happens when I walk from the bedroom into the kitchen and it's through the living room. So it's where I'm living. I thought, maybe there isn't another great love in my life. And it was okay. It was totally okay.
Yeah.
And about a week later, I spoke with a friend of mine in Portugal who I was planning to visit before COVID, and now it was after COVID. And she said, when are you coming? And I said, I'm coming this summer. And we were ready to hang up. And I said to her, I just want to tell you a dating story. And it's the story that I just told.
Yeah.
And she said, I have someone for you to meet. His wife died almost 2 years ago. When you're here, it will be somebody else you can spend time with, who can show you Portugal. And then I didn't know what to write. And then on March 20th, I spoke to her on March 13th. On March 20th, I wrote to him and he wrote back, I don't know, that day or the next day. And then I wanted to say something funny popped into my mind. And so I sent him the photos that my other friend had taken of me. And I wrote, when I'm in Portugal, in case you pass me on the street, you'll recognize me. And he loved the photos. And that led to about a 5-month, starting the beginning of April, FaceTimes regularly, and really getting to know someone from the inside out. And I came here last September and I was here for 17 days, spent 16 days with him. He came to New York I think it was in September, was there for 2 months. And I've been here for a month now, and I'm staying another 2 months, and we're
in Portugal. So for people to know, Susyn's in Portugal with this guy. It's so cool.
It's amazing. And, I'm going to be 74 years old in a month. And
74, Susyn, what, dude? I was going to call you a dude. I have teenage boys, so there's a lot of dude in my world, but you look amazing. And you have the energy of like this childlike energy. I mean, I would never guess in a million years that you're 74 years old, ever.
No, I was thinking I'm old enough to be your mother. And I know you have a fabulous mother.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I just want to pause and say, like my mom too, I went over to her house, their house, my parents' house yesterday, and she's wrapping up a collage course online. She's totally transformed this room into this major like art studio. She's so focused on it. And I thought to myself, literally, this is such a template for how one should age, in the sense of awaken curiosity, creativity, new experiences. And you are embodying that so beautifully, Susyn. I mean, the fact that you're willing to move out of the country, date, and it's awesome. Like, it's awesome. And so many people, when they have the doubt that comes up when you start tapping into your heart's desires, a lot of times it's too old. I'm too old. I could have done that. I had the wrong career then, or the wrong relationship, or, I really shouldn't blah, blah, blah. And you are busting that so wide open. I love it. And I celebrate that. I just think it's awesome.
And I totally receive it. And I say to my clients who ask, am I too old to change? My response is, are you breathing?
And guess what? The only thing that's certain in this world is change. So
Yes.
yeah, I mean, that's the only thing. It's the only thing that is absolutely happening every moment. Change. So, learn to befriend change. Susyn,
Yeah.
okay, so super into this, as you can imagine. So delighted that your wish came true. And so now you have this murmuring that I hear that you have a big, juicy, delicious wish, and that you're feeling that it's time to take action. So do you feel comfortable sharing what that is?
Absolutely.
Yay.
And I it 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 popped up around the time of my 60th birthday. And I was thinking about that I'm moving into being an elder. And that what I wanted my job title to be, I feel like a child saying this, is godmother. And that, I mean, that's really what it is. I have an amazing chosen godson. We met in 2010. And um, and so what that means to me, and what I have been saying for a long time, or acting as if, well, I don't know how to do this, I don't want to do it. So the first few years was, I was embarrassed to say that, which, is the ridiculousness. It's a wonderful thing. I raised 4 stepchildren. I have not birthed children. My oldest stepchild calls me a fairy godmother,
Mm.
and I have another godchild since her birth. I think she's now 40. And so I want to work with a group of women, really kind of mid-60s and beyond, who want to step more fully into this role of being godmother. And this is what godmother means to me. Because I created a ceremony that I did with a friend of mine for my 65th birthday. And part of that is, what's the task of an elder? What's the task of me as a godmother? To share the wisdom of my experience and to be a mighty expression of love in the world, which is constantly evolving.
Can we say that again, Susyn? Can you share again the definition of a godmother?
To share the wisdom of my experience, of your experience, and to be a mighty expression of love in the world, starting wherever you are
I
with
love
love.
that. And I really, first of all, I'm celebrating the fact that you're giving this voice and vibration. You're taking something that is a notion in your mind and heart, and you're voicing it into the world. And I believe that there's power in that. It's one of the steps of the wish work, but it's also something that it has energy. And so I honor you for just trusting us and this podcast to give it voice. So hooray. I will also confess that I think we're in a time right now, especially as generations have not necessarily adapted the same religious, or we've gotten away from what does it actually mean. So I have been asked to be a godparent, of sorts, and I have to say, in my own life, questioning, what does that actually mean? What is that responsibility? Now, I understand a responsibility if someone says, I'd like you to be a guardian of my child in the event of my death. There's a very, very clear set of guidelines. But when you enter the word God, mother, it becomes this nebulous thing that I actually think warrants a definition in these times. And for some people, let's say, who are have a much more structured religion, or let's say a religious community, that may mean very clear things. But for me, as someone who is raised with, one side of my family is Jewish, one side is Christian. I studied, tantric mysticism and Buddhism, and I consider myself a very spiritual person, but not necessarily someone who is adhering to a singular religion, which means that honor bestowed on you, or an honor that you bestow on yourself and maybe act as such for an individual, it requires a little definition and some support around that. And I think that's so beautiful. So thank you for that. And then let's dive a little bit deeper. Where do you see this? Like, what would be your dream scenario of you living this moment where you have this practice in place and your community in place and you're doing that work? What does that actually look like? Can you imagine a moment in time where that's actualized?
There are two parts to it. So one part is I'd like to work with groups of men and women who are, the age 40 comes to my mind, but I don't know if that's written in stone, to be their godmother and to meet with them 4 times a year in a group, to do some individual work with them if that's something that they're called to do. And really to look at the circumstances that happen in our life that test love. So
Yeah,
it
it's
could
like
be
a
early trauma.
love-centered leadership community or something. It's like,
Yes, yes. And to share what I've learned from my experience. I experienced trauma when I was 3, and not a horrific story at all. My mom went to the hospital in the early 50s. If you were hospitalized, this case for this was a hysterectomy, you could easily be in the hospital for 2 weeks. My dad worked all the time. My sisters were much older. They were in school. Thinking my oldest sister may have even been working then. And so my parents decided that it would be best for me to stay with my grandparents, who loved and adored me, whose house I had been to many times, but never by myself. So there's a scene in a big hospital in Manhattan, my mother hugging me goodbye, my grandfather holding a valise, and my mother crying, and I'm not knowing what's going on. And by the time I got to my grandparents, where I'd been many times, I had stopped talking, I had stopped eating. And I'm going to share the final thing in it. My mother had a ritual with me before bedtime. And it was to go into the bathroom, turn on the water so I'd pee, and then brush my teeth. That was the ritual. And it was that first night, my grandmother took me into the bathroom, said, I got on the toilet. I had turned the water on because I went into the bathroom first. No, that isn't what happened. I was on the toilet. My grandmother went out for a moment. I got off the toilet. I turned on the water. My grandmother comes back in. She says, the water doesn't need to be running. And I literally remember the feeling of leaving my body.
Wow.
And I've done a lot of therapy. I've done a lot of therapy with other people, and I have been consciously on this journey since I was 17. And my first prayer was answered that I'm aware of when I was for my 11th birthday. And I went home before my mom came home from the hospital. And much later in life, conversations about this, my mother said, this was a mistake. You were a laughing, dancing, delightful, happy child. And you came home despondent, not talking a lot, not sharing a lot. I mean, I have many, many happy moments of childhood.
No, but I actually think that, I really am so grateful that you're sharing this, because I think that trauma, it can be identified in so many ways, but the truth is that what you're expressing was incredibly traumatic to a 3-year-old. And so our adult brain could say, oh, come on, your mom had to go to the hospital and, it was the 50s and people didn't know about parenting and communication and child psychology and all of that. Okay, all of that's well and good, but that 3-year-old soul, that 3-year-old being felt frightened and abandoned and uncertain of the future. And, and so I really think that it's beautiful, the work that you've done to really identify that and understand the place for love as a vehicle for healing. And yeah, it's beautiful.
And when my first book came out and I wrote this and I was doing book signings, somebody came up to me afterwards and said, I don't know why you think that was such a traumatic experience. And she went on to say that she was in the midst of cancer treatment. And I thought exactly what you said, because some people don't feel their trauma is good enough.
Yeah, right. And the truth is that it doesn't matter what it is. If you are having that emotional wound, that wound stays with you until it is healed and released. And I think that the wisdom that you're sharing right now on a podcast, and then you imagine that in the work that you see yourself doing in the future in terms of wisdom of the elders, which is a whole thing I want to talk about next. I think that there is a real need for that, specifically because of your story, because now there's so much comparisons that happen in every realm of life. So imagine you're in your life and you're feeling stuck and you're not feeling seen. Perhaps you're feeling abandoned, and those patterns of abandonment are showing up now in your current relationships or your work, without the wisdom to say, hey, there may be an emotional trauma from back before your conscious memory that might need some tending to, or here is wisdom that can go back and nurture your youngest self, your most innocent self. And I think that that kind of wisdom is part of the lexicon of wisdom that needs to be out in the world.
Absolutely. I want to add something to this. When I was about 14, I wrote in my journal, what would the world be like if everyone loved themselves? Little did I know that those were my marching orders or my assignment or
yeah, your life's work.
When I know it was a Beatles song, so it was early on when the Beatles were out. I was away at summer camp with a friend with a transistor radio. And I had decided about a year before that I wasn't loved, and my parents were extremely loving, and that I'd never be loved. And so I decided to consciously eliminate the word love from my vocabulary.
Whoa, rebellion. Ooh.
So one of the ways it played out at summer camp, and my mother wrote to me often, I'd write back and was in this major dilemma about whether or not to sign love. I mean, really stuck. But on this one particular day at camp, it was about 16. We were counselors in training. I was walking with my friend in a transistor radio that had earplugs, and one in my ear and one in her ear, and we're listening to some Beatles song. And I'd say out loud, oh, I love this song. And then my very next words were, no, I don't mean I love it. I mean, I like it. So I consciously, for about a decade, eliminated that word from my vocabulary.
Ooh, interesting. Well, those teenage years, and I have 2 teenage boys right now, but those teenage years, it's an interesting time of rebellion. Like it's actually like it's part of exercising that muscle. Anyway, my kids are awesome, but I'm not suggesting that they're like wild, rebellious, hellions right now. But I do recognize that is a very interesting time of exercising some degree of control over your life. But it's interesting because you kind of exercised it against your own truth.
Yes, which then opened the doors to, I remember saying it to my first husband, who was my college sweetheart. And how like it was uncomfortable coming out of my mouth.
Wow.
It was more uncomfortable was the projecting on him all of my I'm not enoughness.
Mm.
And so believing over time that he didn't love me, and my capacity to receive love was limited to the moment. The pattern didn't change. I
Yeah.
needed then the next shiny object or the next acknowledgement, or
Mm.
on one birthday, he didn't have a birthday present for me in the morning, and I was obsessed all day. And I
Mm.
got home from, I think I was in graduate school then. I got home from an internship, and um, he had created a scavenger hunt
Oh,
for me to find clues to the gift that he had bought me, which was a bicycle that I really wanted. But I had tormented myself during the day because it
yeah.
didn't happen the very first thing in the morning.
It's interesting.
And totally in feeding into my belief that love really isn't going to work for me.
Right. And then your life changed. I mean, Susyn, if you can, let's step back a moment and share with everyone what your life's work then became. You've mentioned you're an author, but can you tell us a little bit about your work now?
Yes. Now, I just want to say for 35 years, I did organization development. And my work was even about loving ourselves, even though that was not a word I always used in corporate settings. And my work is now, I call it wholehearted living. And it's based on the idea that our relationship with ourselves forms the blueprint for our relationships in life. So the degree to which I love, and I say selves because it's about loving all of us.
Oh, amen. We have an emotional self and a mental self and a spiritual self, a physical self. And sometimes those selves take on different characteristics, different voices. So
Yes.
when they're all on the same page, everyone gets along. But
Yes. And
I can feel it when one of my voices, is a little bit louder than the rest, or as if it's in a bad mood. It's amazing.
yeah, sometimes the teenage me needs to be acknowledged.
Hmm.
And I say to her, I hear you. What do you need?
Yeah.
And I'm the only one who can give her that. It's the distinction between the wisdom of our heart, which is simple, clear statements, compared to the advice of our head, which is a whole story justifying why this is the right path to go.
I totally and completely agree. And I think, where that layers in nicely with wishing is that wishing is really coming from your heart space. It's coming from the place of your deepest fulfillment and safety and kindness and peace, and insert whatever positive um, phrase or word you like, but it's that place of that, the seat of who you really are, which is why in the guided visualization, or even in the question, what do I wish for? It's a question to your heart, to that heart space. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's thrilling. So for much of my work now is I do individual and group work that focuses on deepening and expanding a loving relationship with ourselves. And right now I'm working with a group of women who are in their it's actually year 3,
Ooh.
early 60s to the oldest is 78. And
Cool.
the wisdom and also the openness to be free of their I'm not enoughness,
Yeah.
what has ruled them. actually today, based on something someone shared last week, we're going to focus on how are you like your mother? Because a lot of the challenges that people have
Yeah.
mentioned have been challenges with their mother. And last week, somebody shared a delightful memory of how she is like her mother.
Yeah.
So
Because some
I'm going to
people,
open
some,
today
some
with
people
that.
say that that's, that question then poses almost a negative response, but it's neutral. It could be, I'm like my mother in these positive ways, or things that I have deemed positive, and I'm like this way in a negative way. And, or a way that doesn't serve me to my highest good. So it's interesting. It is interesting. Let's circle back for a minute, Susyn, and talk about this idea of your big, big wish. Because we began this conversation actually before we recorded with this idea of like, oh, there's, now that I've had my relationship wish come true, this other one is calling to me, this one that I had this strong hit to move towards when I was 60, which was about, 14 years ago. This idea of a program teaching people, groups about the importance of becoming a godmother. What do you think? So what are the next steps in your mind? If you were just to like instinctually, your gut tell you to take action towards making that happen, what does that actually look like? How can we
So,
move that wish forward a
okay,
little bit?
two parts to it. The group for those who are saying yes to being godmothers, and the group for younger people who would like a godmother.
Yeah. And you can be that godmother to them.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Very
And
cool.
so for the older, it starts with my inviting people I know to participate. I don't know exactly what it looks like yet, to participate in some group experience. I mean, off the top of my head, maybe 6 months
Mhm.
to start, of what does it mean to you personally, to them, to be a godmother, and what gets in your way. From it really comes from spiritual counseling, from being a space holder and not jumping into fixing,
Yeah.
into advice. And so it's asking people I know if they'd like to participate. And I've thought about, so what would I charge for this? This is a question for me because I need to be charging for
Yeah,
my
of
work.
course. Yeah.
Is there'll be somewhat of a sliding scale because I want the money to go towards creating a website, which I'm not doing on my own,
Mhm.
and helping put getting this together in I'll create material and things like that, but really creating it in a way that it's something, a
Yeah.
book, manual, a steps to take. So that's one piece. And it's a similar piece for one of my clients now is, I don't remember if she told me she's going to be 41 or 42, is asking some people I know who are that age. And I think for this, no more than 12.
Mhm.
It's just the number that comes to me, who would like to participate in having a godmother in a group setting.
Yeah.
And there can be individual work as well. And invite them to maybe an hour and 15 minutes of what my thoughts are, what they're looking for, something like that. I feel like I've got to do something relatively fast that's concrete,
Yeah.
because I've already had a lot of practice of waiting at least 14 years.
Well, so you know what? It just is, it's an indication that you're ready. You're excited about it. You're ready. Now that you've said it out loud, there's a little bit of accountability there. There's a little bit of momentum there. And also I think that there's always something dynamic that happens with the intersection of what you desire and something that scares you just a little bit. Because if you're not
Yes.
scared just a little bit, it's not juicy enough. If it were easy, it's like, it's satisfying, but what's really satisfying is doing the thing that makes you a little bit nervous. And so the work that you're doing with love, which sounds like, it is a form of spiritual coaching anyway. In a way, you're owning a little bit more truth of that by putting the word godmother. You are actually owning a little bit more that this is a spiritual practice that is coming from a loving, nurturing place, and that society actually needs that. There is a longing for that, not needing to hide it under leadership coaching, but actually inviting the topic of God, whatever God that looks like for you, whatever spiritual energy that looks like for you, to take a place, because a society, in my opinion, that has removed spirituality is a society that's struggling to figure out who they are.
Yes.
And I think that, I'm very fascinated about this work. And I think that when you have a spiritual perspective in the world, you also, alongside of that is humility. And I think that we have lost a lot of our humility to understand that we are, humble servants of something much bigger and more mysterious than ourselves, because the world is unbelievably mysterious. It is. And in a way, we've begun to think that we're so powerful. But I think it's much healthier to understand that when you are a humble servant of, the job is not entirely on your shoulders, and you can learn to develop a relationship with yourself, with the deepest part of yourself, the seat of your soul. So I love this, Susyn. I love it. And it sounds like, especially because in a way, this is not in a way, I think it is most certainly an extension of the work that you're already doing. My suggestion is for you to lean on that. The fact that you know what it is to lead mastermind groups, you probably already know about charging. You probably have what I call the warm market leads, meaning go to the communities and the individuals that already know you and love you and say, hey, I'm going to lean into this idea of the word methodology, but it's not quite it, but like the something of being a godmother, like what that looks like. And in both of those two different offerings, but start to make time in your calendar to pull out your computer or a journal and map out what that actually looks like. So it's holding the notion and the feeling and the idea, but then also taking the time to bring the concept down to earth and in the material form by, here are the next steps. And the next step may be to have schedule one call with that 41-year-old client and says, can I pick your brain for 30 minutes or an hour? I have this idea, like, would you have a couple of friends that might be interested in learning about the power of having a spiritual elder, like a godmother, like a fairy godmother? And, just get some questions out and get some response, because thinking about the way that you told your story about finding your new relationship and discovering even a deeper level of love within yourself, the spirit by which you shared that, and there's a video that this is being recorded on video and audio, the look on your face, and even now you have this literally childlike wonder on your face. And I was talking about wishing with another group very recently, and the word adventure kept on coming up. And I said, wishing is like, it's like setting out on an adventure. Like when you visualize, you're seeing a moment where you're already living your wish and you're like, okay, I saw this movie of myself, and let's like pack a bag and set out on an adventure to go make that reality happen, or to bring those details into my life like right now. And the woman that I was speaking with was like, I love the idea of an adventure because it's a quest, it's fun, it's playful, it's like a little bit dirty, it's an adventure. And there's a point of view with that. So while on one hand, I'm telling you, make goals, write out tasks, things that you can do, all through the spirit of you are ready for this next adventure.
Yes.
And
And I
the
have to say,
time, it doesn't matter, Susyn, that about the time, because 15, 14 years ago, maybe the world wasn't ready to hear about godmothers, but they're ready now. And you are older and wiser now.
what's so fascinating to me is I left my corporate work I was still doing a little of it in 2007, 2008. And um, and I have taken, I mean, I've spent over $50,000 in marketing courses. I could teach them. I don't do it. And my method of the 35 years when computers were new, and I had a corporate consulting practice. I'd sit on the corner of my rose-colored couch at the time, and I'd look up and I'd say, I'm ready for a new client. And I have been, as recently as earlier today, maybe I need somebody else to help with this marketing of not this, of other things.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling the roots beneath my feet of do it the way that's worked for you. You wandered for 15 years, living in different states, being single, trusted the impulse of where to go next. You went through enormous amounts of money, and you always had enough, and often more than enough. So do what has worked.
Yep. 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 And also, I mean, Susyn, honestly, trust me, as someone who's like scratching their head, like, is there like some sort of marketing game that I don't know about that I need, I believe me, you're preaching to the choir. And yet I also think, just entrepreneur to entrepreneur, the more that you just own doing it your way and releasing this constant projection that someone else is doing it, quote unquote, right, it is the biggest trap in the world. And yesterday, I have a course on my Alexa Fischer site called Speak with Confidence. And I offer a monthly live Q&A. Like, so you can talk to me about whatever you're working on. But again, it's very interesting in the heart space of going after, because all of my work is about finding the confidence to go after your dreams. And part of it is speaking them, whether they're on camera, on stage, and all the rest of it. So there's a part of me that even though, sending out the announcement to all the students and you're just like, I wonder if anyone is going to show up. Why? Because when you are going after your dreams, you're also meeting your biggest voice that's stopping you. I know this about my people. And so I get on the live and one student shows up, one. And this guy, John, is awesome. He's awesome. And he ended up getting like an hour coaching call with me. And I just thought at the end of it, I said, wow, Alexa. And I had so much fun and he had so much fun and totally like set him off on a direction to also take action towards one of his biggest dreams. And I said, there could be one voice that says, gosh, why aren't there more students or why didn't more people show up and all that? And I was like, not today, Satan. Today was a great day because if you help one person who really was like, oh, I totally know what to do now, it's the best. And so I think that they're, when I look at your story as briefly as it's been, we've only known each other, let's see, in an hour, 45 minutes, however long this has been. I say, yes, own your path, celebrate your path, take action and do it your way. And likely what you need is already at your fingertips.
Yes.
It's at your fingertips.
Yes. Well, this is how close it is to my fingertips. My group that I mentioned, 60 to 78, it's a group of 6 people. I meet with them at 6:30 p.m. my time, which is 1:30 Eastern time 10:30 Pacific time
Yeah.
today. And
Yay.
I'm going to invite to one session.
Yeah. Perfect.
And because I'll choose a date for that,
Yeah.
I'll then be prepared about what I want to say.
Exactly. And
what
sometimes you have to,
the next step, what the next action
I love it.
will be.
I love it. Well, I invite you to really take time in beautiful Portugal to almost write a manifesto about what does being a godmother mean in today's world. And just give it your love, your light, your insight, stream of consciousness writing. Don't stop. Don't worry about grammar. This is not for your web copy. It's not for a handout. It's not for anything. Just let it flow and meet that intention with the reverence that you've been giving it in your heart for all these years, and allow that delicious experience to be your acknowledgement of the whispers that have been happening over and over and over again. Because I believe in my heart that there's a lot of unpacking around this idea of a fairy godmother, or appointing yourself as the role of a godmother, or there's just so much around that. And I think that we need wisdom of elders. And we also, for the people that, let's say, did not have the strongest mother role models in their lives, or spiritual guides in their lives, there's a place for people to receive that kind of guidance, who maybe just didn't have it in their own lives. That's for your younger audience. So there's enormous opportunity, and it seems like such a beautiful natural extension of who you are and what you do and what you're excited about doing.
Yes, there's a place in me where it's beginning to feel as though this can be easy.
Yes, and let it be so, my friend. Let it be so. Let it be easy and fun and full of adventure. Why not?
Yes. Yes.
So exciting. Well, Susyn, how can people find you in the interwebs?
Right now, they can find me on my website, which is susynreeve.com. And Susyn is spelled Susyn. And all of my books are there, and the deck of cards that I created are there. And on Instagram, I'm at Heart Healing Wisdom.
Beautiful. Heart Healing Wisdom. And of course, all the links to Susyn's website and her social media and all that are going to be in the show notes. And Susyn, I hope that this is the first podcast of many, so we can stay abreast of your journey and the work that you're doing in the world.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you, Susyn. This has been such a delight.
Thank you. You're welcome. And thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm excited. I bought new notebooks the other day. One of them will be, this one will be where I'll do my writing.
Awesome. We can't wait to see it.
Much love to you, and thank you for who you are and what you do.
My pleasure.
And I love.
They look amazing on you. They're gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Thank you.
Incredible.
You're yours. Bye.
Thank you, Susyn.
You're so welcome. Bye-bye.
One of the reasons why I love doing Wishbeads is because I just meet with extraordinary people. My circle of friends and contacts has grown and grown. And here I am with my new friend, Susyn, in Portugal. And just so honored to see how she is putting such beautiful work into the world and to see where her work goes next. So what does this mean for you? If you are listening to this, and if you're still listening to this, it means that you are ready to say yes to your big, beautiful wish. Now, whether you have a piece of jewelry or my book, I hope that you will attend our next virtual wish circle. They happen every month. And this year, I'm actually hosting more in-person events. So if you're not signed up on our newsletter, go ahead and join over at wishbeads.com, and you'll get all of the information about our local wish bashes that we're hosting, which is an afternoon of fun and crafting and wishing and making your own beaded bracelet and paper bead bracelet. And I'm also working on some details for a retreat. So you're going to want to make sure that you are on my list. And plus, we have special deals that come out from time to time, and you're going to want to know about them. So thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Please leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Your reviews actually make a huge difference. So whether you're reviewing our products, whether you purchased on Amazon, or whether you're just listening to the podcast, all of it is good. All of it is appreciated. And we thank you for sharing Wish Beads with yourself and with the ones that you love. All right. Happy wishing. And until next time, stay awesome. All right. Bye.